Okay, so the book of Revelation, it can feel like a total maze, right? It's filled with these powerful images and timelines that can be really tough to piece together. Today, we're going to tackle one huge question that honestly could change the way you see the entire end times narrative. And that question is, when does the beast from Revelation 13 actually start his war on the saints? Let's dive in.
And man, the whole thing kicks off with this really chilling warning. Satan is furious. He's been cast down to earth, and he knows his time is running out. This sets the stage for a final, all-out, desperate conflict. So here's the backstory from chapter 12. You've got this epic war in heaven, and the dragon, Satan himself, gets the boot. He's exiled to earth. And what's his first move? Pure vengeance. He immediately starts going after the woman, a really important symbolic figure, and her children. Who are they? They're the ones who keep God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And this is where a prophetic clock literally starts ticking. The woman is whisked away to a place of refuge, the wilderness, where she's protected for a very specific length of time, 1,260 days. But here's the thing, the dragon can't get to her, so he pivots. He turns all that rage onto the rest of her kids, the saints on earth.
And this brings us to the absolute core of the mystery. Chapter 12 ends with the dragon standing there on the sand, just seething, ready to fight. Then chapter 13 kicks in, and we get this whole story about the beast rising up and waging his war. So the critical question, the one we're here to solve, is this. Does this war happen after those 1,260 days of protection are over, or is it happening during that exact same period?
So people basically fall into two camps on this. The first view is pretty straightforward. It's a linear timeline. The 1260 days end, then the war starts. Simple, A then B. The second view is totally different. It argues that chapter 13 isn't a sequel at all. It's more like hitting the Zimmel button on the war that's happening inside those 1260 days. Let's break down both of these.
All right, let's start with that first idea, the one that reads Revelation like a storybook, where chapter 13 happens right after chapter 12 wraps up. So the idea here is super simple. For 1,260 days, the saints are protected. Once that time is up, the beast pops up, starts enforcing his mark, and begins the persecution. Easy, right? One event ends, the next begins. But does that actually hold up when you look closer? Yeah, not so fast. Because when you actually try to map this out, some pretty massive holes start to show up. We're talking about major logical and theological problems that come straight from the text itself. Okay, check out these big snags. First, you've got the resurrection problem. The Bible is clear that the first resurrection of the saints who were martyred happens right at the end of this time period. So if the beast's war only starts after that, who is he persecuting? You can't have a second first resurrection. It doesn't make sense. Then there's the 7 plagues problem. This timeline puts the beast's reign right in the middle of God's 7 last plagues, which are literally tearing the world apart. Not exactly a stable time to set up a global system of worship, you know? And finally, the whole thing creates an empty battlefield problem. If the saints are resurrected and gone, who is the dragon even fighting? See what I mean? It just doesn't add up. Okay, so with all those problems, let's look at the second view. This one reframes the whole narrative, and honestly, it starts to make a lot more sense. It suggests we're not supposed to be reading this like a linear story, but more like a change in camera angle. People call this the zoom-in theory, and it's a great way to think about it. It says chapter 13 is not about what happens next. Instead, it's like grabbing a magnifying glass to look at the details of how the dragon wages that war on the saints, the war that was already announced back in chapter 12. It's not the next scene, it's a close-up on the current one. And look at how neatly this connects everything. Chapter 12 leaves us with the dragon, furious, standing on the shore, ready for war. Then, boom, chapter 13 opens and shows us his weapon of choice, the beast that rises from the sea. This beast is the one who does the dirty work, waging war on the saints during those 1,260 days. And it's this persecution that creates the very martyrs who get raised in the first resurrection when the 1,260 days are over. It all flows together perfectly. And just like that, poof, all those contradictions we saw in the first view, they're gone. There's only one first resurrection. And now we understand that the persecution is what leads to it. The saints are actually on the battlefield to be persecuted, and the war happens before God's final judgment and plagues. The whole narrative clicks into place. So you might be thinking, okay, why does this timing detail matter so much? Well, it's huge, because getting this timeline right completely changes our understanding of what the Great Tribulation is all about and what the experience of the saints will actually be.
Let's just lay it all out here on this timeline. It becomes crystal clear. The 1260 days are the main event, the period of the beast's reign and the saints' persecution. This is when they face the test, refuse the mark, and many become martyrs. Then, at the end of that period, the first resurrection happens and they are taken. It's only after the saints are resurrected and safe that the final plagues are poured out on those who followed the beast. And that's really the heart of it all. This great, terrible war on the saints isn't some final act after the main story is over. No, it is the main story. It's the ultimate test of faith that happens before God's judgment begins. The tribulation is the time of trial that leads to resurrection, which then clears the stage for the final judgment on the wicked.
So that leaves us with a really powerful and maybe even challenging thought. If this timeline is right, then the role of the saints in the final days isn't about finding a way to escape the conflict. It's about facing it head on, overcoming it through faith, even if that means martyrdom, and in doing so, securing their place in that glorious resurrection right before the very end. It's a pretty intense and sobering view of the end of the age.